Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene, but they have built up a very good reputation for themselves in that short time. Now, if people were going to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but in recent times they have been diversifying quite a little bit and trying their hand at other styles, which they've been pretty successful with in my opinion. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I know these guys can do very well. It's a sub-style that I really quite enjoy from this brewery as well, and it is of course one of their latest releases, like I said, and it is supposed to be a very nice example of that particular sub-style as well. And it's also a kind of reimagining of one of their really respected and quite well liked beers, I have to say. So yeah, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit west of me here in Clackmannanshire over to Glasgow. We're going to go to Yoker to be precise, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Big Weegie. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this is a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And it is of course basically a scaling up of the famous Weegie Paleo, which was or is 5.5% ABV. I've tried that beer many a time before, but I've actually never reviewed it for you here on the channel, so that is something I will need to sort out at some point in the future. But when I saw they were releasing a triple IPA version of the Weegie, I had to get a can of this to review for you here. So yeah, let's crack on with this one and see what it's all about. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. I do have a few other beers from these guys to take a look at, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage as well and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and tell you once again about Overtone Brewing Company. So, Overtone Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Yoker in Glasgow, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. But he had been a home brewer for a number of years before he founded the brewery, and the name Overtone is taken from his love of techno music, and that's why on many of these cans that you'll find from Overtone, they have these lovely kind of round dolls that are based on, you know, the kind of techno displays and things that you'll see at concerts. I know Peter, the Clueless Drinker, is a huge fan of these. But yeah, in the early days, Bo Wei hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire in New England in the northeastern US, to come in as his head brewer, and he previously worked as a head chef but also as a brewer in England, New York and in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, a brewery I do recommend you check out. They do some really nice Belgian beers. But yeah, he came in, he brought with him his kind of native beer style, if you like, the New England Hazy IPA, and this is what the brewery has really kind of focused on. These guys are the first brewery in Scotland to use the New England IPA as their kind of signature style. But also involved at the brewery is Martin Conahan, who worked in the craft beer scene down in New Zealand for a number of years. He takes part in the brewing but does a number of other things behind the scenes as well, and these days they've got Charlie Irving as well, and he comes from a background of home brewing and previously worked for another local brewery in Glasgow too. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank, and they began operations there back in 2018. I'm not actually sure though whether Overtone say they were founded in 2017 or in 2018, to be honest. But the brewery don't have a fixed range of beers. They're always brewing different things and trying different styles along with the New England Hazies. But like I said, these guys are the first brewery in Scotland that really used the New England Hazy as their core style. But over the years, they've continued to expand the brewery infrastructure. They've added a barrel program in there as well, which is quite interesting. And as of July 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 160 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about Overtone Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's your history section of this video. So let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is a 440ml can, which is standard for Overtone Brewing. You can see on the side, as we always get to, there is the Overtone Big Weegie. Like we said earlier, comes in at 10% ABV, a New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA, plain silver top on the can there. And if memory serves me correctly, I got this beer at the Larder in Dollar. Actually, they always get a good selection of Overtone stuff, so I always go there every 1 or 2 weeks when I'm back home in the motherland of Scotland. But yeah, it tells you the hop profile on this one. So this one has Mosaic, Mosaic Cryo, Eldorado, Eldorado Cryo, Azaka and Brew 1 in it. So Mosaic, all of these hops actually, yep, all of them are American. Mosaic about 14% alpha acid. It's going to give you that lovely kind of juicy kind of tangerine quality. Eldorado is about 12% alpha acid. It gives you a mix of like mango, passion fruit and kind of pineapple. Azaka is going to give you a little bit of a kind of more mandarin-y orange, like a slightly sharper orange but with some pineapple as well. And then Brew 1 is, I forget how much alpha acid that is, maybe about 10 or 12%. I think it's slightly lower, but it also gives you this lovely kind of pineapple-y type quality to your beer. But I'll just let you have a little closer look at the artwork on this one. I'll just give it a wipe because the can has been sweating a little bit. You can see it's got this kind of lovely techno pattern to it, as you would always expect from Overtone Brewing Company. I can't remember how much I paid for this beer. I think it might have been about £7 sterling or something like that. That's kind of standard for an Overtone triple IPA these days. But yeah, like we said, 10% New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Basically a reimagining of the Weegie Pale Ale that Overtone do, but a big 10% monster of a thing. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I've been looking forward to this beer for quite a wee while actually. And this is one of the really cool things about Overtone is, I'd love to know what their creative process is when it comes to designing these beers. I mean, do they choose the hops first or the malts or whatever? But yeah, I'd be really curious to know how they actually kind of engineer their beers, what thing they think about first, whether it's what malt base they want to use and what hops would go with it, or if it's the other way around. You know, choose the hops first and then you know, look at what malts would fit, or think about what fruity flavours they would want, and then choose the hops and then the base based on that. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured pretty much exactly as you would expect from any New England Hazy IPA, regardless of the strength. But yeah, you can see that this beer is poured. We've got maybe about 2/3 or 3/4 of the beer out into the glass. It's poured with just a little bit over a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head there. You can see there's some medium sized bubbles mixed in with mainly sort of foamy things there. I'm not sure how well that is going to show up on the camera there, but you can see the colour of this one. I think it's appearing a little bit more amber to you guys than it is to me with the naked eye. This is a very, very kind of rich, strong yellow colour, this one. I always like comparing the New England IPAs appearances to different fruit juices. This one reminds me of a very slightly kind of mixed tropical mango and pineapple juice or something like that. But yeah, lovely, quite deep yellow, very slightly amber colour that you're getting out of this one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it. But when it comes to IPAs of pretty much any variety other than fruit IPAs, you don't often have to care about that. But yeah, this one is certainly in the realms of what you'd expect. Not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. When we talk about the level of haze in this beer, it's pretty good, but it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England triples that I've come across. But remember, the level of haze in a New England IPA depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. It can vary from brewery to brewery though, and recipe to recipe. There's not really any rule about that. But you know, this beer looks pretty much as you would expect from a New England hazy, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the appearance of the big Weegie. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's all about. So let's do this. Oh yeah, you can smell right away that this thing is an absolute monster. It smells really nice. So I'm going to say, just from memory, this is one of the sweeter New Englands that I've had from Overtone in terms of aroma, but it gives you everything you'd want from the New England style. You get the creaminess in there, you get a bit of sweetness out of it, lovely big kind of bright green component, and lots of juicy fruity notes. There's everything that you would want from the style in there. But certainly, just on first impression, this is absolutely one of the more sweet aromas that I've had from Overtone. But yeah, as I've said on the channel many times before, for me, there are kind of 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of these beers. So you've got the kind of farmhousey, grainy side of things, the rye-leaning, the farmhousey, yeasty type character, the rye-leaning, grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in American-brewed New England IPAs. This is where the style really was on the spectrum when it first started, but then you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweet side of things. And this is of course the way that the European take on the New England style has evolved, to be honest with you, mainly based on the likes of Treehouse and Trillium type beers. But if you go to Lawson's Finest Liquids, Hill Farmstead, and you know, Alchemist Brewery and things like that, you'll get the idea of the really old school farmhousey type IPAs that you had in New England originally. But this one strikes me as being one on the sweeter end of the spectrum compared to other overtones that we've had in the past, but I get quite a little bit of wheat out of it as well, just on first aroma. But let's break the aroma down and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we taste the beer. So yeah, the backbone of the beer for me with this one, it's got a lovely little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there, so you can smell that just forming the backbone of the beer. There's a little touch of woodiness in there as well, but not too much, a little bit of cracker. But above that you get lots of bread and wheat and oat coming out of it, definitely. Yeah, for me, above the bread crust and the cracker, there's a little touch, there's a very slight touch of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of it. And then you get this big, fluffy, dense and slightly sweet white bready character. But at the back of the nose, you're definitely, the more I smell of this beer, the more kind of wheaty character I get out of it. You definitely have a little bit of that kind of wheaty bitiness to this one, which is really, really nice. So yeah, lovely big sort of wheaty bitiness to the beer. That really does come out the further back in the nose you go. But yeah, above the kind of white, the straight up white bready character that this beer has, you do get that more dense white bread, which is obviously coming from the wheaty aspect of this one. But above all of that, you start to get the oats. And as I've said many a time on the channel before, oats in New England IPAs are very often an indicator of how fresh your beer is. This one isn't at its prime freshness. I mean, does it say a canned on date? It said PO, which I guess it's packaged on, the 17th of May. So we're drinking this beer, I think, when it's about 2 months old actually. That's when I'm reviewing this one, so it's quite interesting to try an Overtone beer at this particular age. So yeah, with the oaty character in this one, oats, as I say, are always a good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. The creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older the beer is. That's the basic thing. But yeah, the only time that kind of rule, if you like, lets you down is when it's an oat cream IPA. It's quite hard to tell in that case. But yeah, with this beer, you certainly smell quite a little bit of creaminess from the oats, but you are starting to get the dryness. It starts to show maybe after about 6 weeks or so. So a little bit of oaty dryness in there, good little bit of oaty creaminess, but you get quite a little bit of the kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing coming out of this beer. And there is maybe just a little bit of a straight up caramel, but when the beer is 10% ABV, you are going to get that little bit of sweetness to cover the booziness, so absolutely makes sense with this one. But yeah, I have to say, compared to what I remember of the other Overtone triple IPAs that I've had, this one strikes me as being a little bit sweeter than some of the others, a little bit more butter candy, Werther's Original type thing coming out of it. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the aroma. So let's go on to the green component of this one. So for me, as I said earlier, it's got a lovely big kind of bright floral and grassy kind of green component. So again, as I've said in many New England and generally IPA reviews before, there are 3 different kinds of hoppings that you can do with IPA. So if we use a 90-minute wort boil as our model, within the first hour of the wort boil you have early addition hopping. That gives you mainly bitterness in the flavour, and it will translate to a lovely kind of big, deep, dank aroma. Late addition hopping comes within the last half hour of the wort boil. It'll give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma, and in the aroma it's going to translate to a brighter kind of green component, more floral, grassy. Dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, that's all about flavour and aroma, no bitterness, and again it gives you a very bright aroma. So West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3 types of hoppings, hence why they're a little bit more bitter and dank. New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2, late addition and dry hopping, and that's quite obvious in this case. You've got a little tiny touch of earthiness in there from the Mosaic, but otherwise it's quite bright and floral, and it's quite oily in its floral character too, and you've got some nice kind of oily grassiness coming out of this one too. But yeah, otherwise it's pretty straightforward in the green component. A little bit of earthiness, as I say, big oily kind of floral character, and a nice little bit of zesty grassiness in there. So yeah, last thing for the aroma then is the fruity side of things. So let's look at that. And I will say, the fruity side of this beer is kind of what you would expect if you know these hops. It's basically a bunch of orange and pineapple. So yeah, there's a little touch of like passion fruit to this one, like a more pungent passion fruit, but I do get quite a little bit of mango out of this one as well, like quite a ripe mango, which I wasn't quite expecting. I mean, that's maybe going to come from the El Dorado and maybe very slightly from the Azacca, to be honest with you, but I think the El Dorado is the one that's most likely to be culpable for the mango notes, if you like. So yeah, a little bit of passion fruit, big juicy mango, nice kind of more oily passion fruit in there, but then you get pineapple, but you get a lot of big zesty orange, and that's going to come from the Mosaic and from the Azacca. I think the Azacca is going to give you the sharper kind of tangerine, the Mosaic is going to give you the more the Azacca is going to give you the sharper mandarin, but the Mosaic is going to give you the kind of juicier tangerine type qualities. So yeah, the way that goes together is really nice. It's a lovely aroma, this, but certainly one, it's maybe even got a little bit of peach to it, this one, I have to say. But yeah, definitely one of the more zesty, orangey leaning New England IPAs that I've come across from Overtone, in addition to being one of the sweeter ones, I would say too. But yeah, lovely aroma, I have to say, and it goes together very well. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think we should have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Big Weegie 10% double dry hopped triple IPA, triple New England hazy IPA from Overtone Brewing in Yoker in Glasgow in Scotland. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. First impression of this one, it's got the lovely typical creaminess that you would expect of Overtone, absolutely. But it strikes me as being one of the more oily and sweet New Englands that I've had from them. And yeah, it does give you that. You can tell it's not quite at its freshest, but we won't hold that against them. It's not quite at its freshest. You're getting some of the oaty dryness and things out of this one. But once again, it's a beautiful, beautiful beer, and you cannot knock this. So yeah, big thumbs up to Overtone Brewing. Once again, definitely cool to see them take one, probably their most regular beer, if we can call that, the Weegie, and just scale it up and make it an absolute monster. So yeah. But yeah, that is pretty damn good. Again, as you would expect, gives you everything you want. Bit of creaminess, quite a sweet bit of sweetness in there, nice big green component, and then some lovely oily, fruity characters as well. So yeah, the way that this one pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah. So let's just break it down and describe the flavour a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer is that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust. That's it. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of woodiness in there, for sure. And then above the kind of bread crusty backbone, there's a little bit of a kind of cream cracker sort of note comes out of this one, which I think is really, really nice. So yeah, let's see, bread crust there, fresh white bread crust. It almost feels as if it has a little bit of the, you know, it's like that, it's come straight out of the baker's, like a hedgehog roll or something like that. It feels like it's got a little bit of like flour on it, it's that fresh. But like I say, little touch of woodiness there, the Jacob's cream cracker, and then you start to get the kind of barley malt characteristics out of this one. So just above the cracker I get a little touch of like a very slight wholemeal brown bready note. And then above that you start to get a, above that you start to get a kind of fluffy, fresh white bready character coming out of the beer. So yeah, fluffy, fresh white bready character coming out of this one. And it's got a bit of sweetness to it as well, which I think is really nice. And then above that, you start to get a more kind of, above that, you start to get a more dense, wheaty character coming out of the beer, which is also really interesting. So yeah, big, dense, kind of wheaty character in there. The wheat has a little bit of bite to it as well, but yeah, you can feel the wheat just densifying out that white bready sort of thing. And above all of that, you get the nice oaty characteristics. So yeah, as you go down that middle line of your, palate there, you can feel the nice kind of creamy side of the oats, and then as you move out toward the edge, it becomes a little bit drier and gives you all these different kind of things. So yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me for sure. So yeah, the oaty characteristics in this one are showing you this beer. It makes kind of sense. It's giving you the nice kind of creamy notes down the middle, a bit of the drier things further out on the edges of the palate there. But above that, you do still get a nice little bit of sweetness out of this beer. So you can feel you've got like a little circle in the middle of your palate there, and in the dead centre of your tongue, it's almost like a little bit fudgy or like straight up caramel. And then underneath that, you get the more kind of Werther's Original sort of note out of the beer, and there's a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's Digestive biscuity sort of note coming out of it too. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense too, I think is very, very nice. The sweetness that you get out of this beer is really, really good. So yeah, that's the middle third of this palate. The middle third of the palate in this beer kind of covered, I would say. Yeah, so let's move on to the back third of the palate then. And as I've often said, the back third of the palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate. They just come out in different intensities. But remember that trend. More dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, in that border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of kind of bready build up in there. Wee bit of a wholemeal brown bread in the base, but a fluffier white bread further up, and you get a little touch of wheaty bitiness there above all of that. But on the back third of the palate, you've got the fresh white bread bread crust, which feels a little bit drier. You've got the crackery layer, which again feels a wee bit drier. You've got a wholemeal brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more taller and airy. Then you have that more fluffy white bready character that comes out of this one as well, which is really nice. So yeah, nice fluffy white bready character there, which again feels a bit lighter and more airy. Then the wheaty note just kind of goes above that. The wheat kind of creeps over from the middle third of your palate and gives you that wee bit more kind of wheaty, bitey character, which I think is absolutely great. So yeah, lovely bit of wheaty bitiness in there, and above all of that you start to get a little bit of the more yeasty character coming out of the beer. So the yeasty note in this beer is quite interesting. So for me, above everything else, you get a little bit of like a sweet wholemeal brown bready kind of character. It's got a wee bit of woodiness and crackeriness to it, and then it's just kind of wrapped in this sort of honeycomb, Werther's Original type flavour. I always get a little bit of honeycomb from the yeasty characters in these beers for some reason, but definitely that sits above the all the malty side on the back third of the palate. You can absolutely feel that the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and it squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer on the malty and yeasty side of things is really nice. But yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So we'll start off with the green component. So yeah, the green component of this beer then. In the back corners of the palate you get a nice little bit of earthiness in there, which again I think will be coming from the mosaic in this beer. But as you move further forward, you can feel you do get this lovely kind of smoothness coming out of the beer, and that's quite often what happens with the green component when you use cryo oil. You can feel this lovely smoothness there. So yeah, you can feel that floral character come out more and more as you move further forward, and you do actually get a little bit of a more spicy floral note just sitting there on the when you reach the front kind of corners of your palate. So yeah, that's really quite interesting. With this one I have to say you just get a little touch of spiciness there out of the floral aromaticity, but yeah, the green component for me is really quite oily rather than anything else. But around the front curve of the tongue you get a little bit of that lighter grassy sort of thing as well. A lovely little bit of kind of floral aromaticity just creeping around there too, but you get a wee bit, it's mainly grassy and kind of zesty. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense, the green component is really nice. So yeah, blends in together really, really well. So in terms of the green component, the cryo gives you that lovely smoothness, and it's kind of in keeping with the slightly sweeter and creamier aspects of this beer. But you do, the further into the aftertaste you go with this one, you get quite a little bit of you do get quite a little bit of wheaty bitiness out of the beer too, which is interesting. But yeah, let's focus on that front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of this beer. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of bready build up, and there a wee touch of brown bread underneath, but mainly a kind of quite dense and slightly sweet white bread. The base of the front third of your palate, a little bit of bread crust, wee tiny bit of wholemeal brown bread, then mainly a dense and smooth white bready character, and above that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on those fruity side of things, as I said. At the back of that front third of your palate, yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little touch. There's a teeny little bit of a grapefruity note there, which is probably going to come from these ones. It's probably the Eldorado. It's giving you that little touch of grapefruit. Then you get a juicy passion fruit there, and big juicy kind of mango notes coming out of this beer as you move toward the middle of that front third of your palate. But lots of big pineapple in there as well. The pineapple comes out a wee bit more the further into the aftertaste that you go, but when you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the orange. I mean, the mosaic's giving you that big kind of tangerine note. The Azacca's giving you the more kind of mandarin-y quality. But yeah, you've got pineapple from both the Eldorado and the Brew 1 in this coming out quite heavily. The pineapple, I think, just takes a bit of time to show its head in the aftertaste. But yeah, it's like big pineapple on the top, big oily orange underneath, and you've got a wee bit of ripe, juicy mango sitting behind that, to be honest with you. I think that covers the fruity side of this beer quite nicely, to be honest. But yeah, definitely when I think about the overall flavour of this beer compared to the other New England triples that I've had from Overtone, this one is definitely a bit more malty and a bit sweeter, I would say. But yeah, it's nice to have a kind of change of pace from that in a sense. It's cool to see Overtone playing around with different hops and different recipes and so on. But yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me, which I expected it would. You know, Overtone know what they're doing with this particular style. So yeah, I think we can round off this review with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, it's definitely kind of, I'd say it's bottom end to full bodied, top end to mid bodied. It's around that kind of region. Big smooth carbonation. It has got a bit of creaminess underneath, but overall I would say that this beer, it's creamy at the same time as being quite oily and slick. I think that's probably a good way to describe it. In terms of IBUs, I think this one is I think this is about 40-ish IBUs, to be honest with you. It doesn't strike me as being overly bitter, but yeah, the malt base, like we said, has a bit of dryness underneath, a lovely smoothness in the middle, which has a wee bit of sweetness to it, and then the sweetness on top. So yeah, for me, the malt base is kind of a mixture, a nice balance of smooth, creamy, and sweet. That's definitely fair to say. We've said, yeah, it's about 40-ish IBUs. Then you've got this lovely big mix of fruity character in this one. The tropical fruits are lovely and juicy, but I think the orangey side of this one is a little bit more kind of citrusy and zesty. I think that's absolutely fair to say. But overall, beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. Wouldn't expect any less of Overtone Brewing, especially when they're doing a kind of reimagined version of one of their more popular beers, if we can call it that. So yeah, I think that's a good place to round off this review. This one was the Big Weegie, a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA, coming in at 10% ABV with Mosaic, Eldorado, Azacca and Brew 1. Really nice mix of things going on with this beer. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the future. I think I've got 2 more beers from them sitting in the fridge at the moment, and you will no doubt see more from these guys on the channel as time goes on, because I really do enjoy the beers. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Overtone's social media, and do let me know any other interesting Scottish breweries that I haven't covered on the channel yet, because I know there have been many opening up. But yeah, till the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Overtone's, and I will see you guys in the next review. Ciao just now.